pointed right at my eye. I want to first of all thank the not ready for prime time players. I usually don't pay attention to those skits. This was a good one. My name is Don, and I am an alcoholic. And I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have been continuously sober by the grace of God since December 26th of 1967. And I come from a part of the country where if you don't mention your sobriety date, you probably don't have one. But of more importance, you new people need to know something. Relapse is not a necessary part of recovery. It will happen, but if you're alcoholic, you don't ever have to drink again. And I'm a living example of that. So is Pat. I hang out with people 40 and 50 years sober, mainly because somebody's got to hang out with them. My turn's coming up, and I want to build some good karma, right? My home group is simply known as an AA group. In forming the group, we were thinking about names. We went to the long form of the third tradition, and it says that any two or more alcoholics gathered for sobriety may call themselves an AA group. So we do. And we're not smart, but we're cute. Our central office told us we couldn't register under that name. And we reminded them that they work for us, not the other way around. And a favor. I wore this jacket to show you how much I respect you and because it's the coolest jacket I've ever owned. But it's really hot up here. Would you mind if I took it off? Okay. That's better. Thank you. My gratitude to Alcoholics Anonymous comes from the fact that Alcoholics Anonymous did not get me sober. God got me sober. And 5.5 months later, hand carried me to where Alcoholics Anonymous could find me, because had I not had that happen, I wouldn't be here. I didn't know I was alcoholic. I was certified by one government agency as a sociopath type 2, or sociopath, a psychopath, and a manic depressive drug addict, because I hid my alcoholism behind high drama, and you weren't gonna get my stuff. Not a clue that I was alcoholic. I knew I was insane. I'd been insane since I was little, based on the fact that early on I began to understand that I don't think like regular people do. My emotional responses are not normal, if there is such a thing as normal. They weren't the same as the people I was around. I have a tendency to laugh at funerals and cry at hockey games. I got kicked out of Tecate, Mexico for that. They had a big funeral, and I didn't know how to respond, and I just burst into laughter, and they took offense. It's hard to get thrown out of Tecate, Mexico. A friend of mine had gone down there for the grape cure, and we were picking him up on the way home. Yeah, nothing but grapes for a month. Detoxes your system. Boy, did he need a drink when he was through, huh? I come from a functional home, and I apologize for that, but I do. I can describe functional. My dad is the epitome of functional. He died 4 years ago in March, 86 years old. Dry gangrene in one leg. His memory was beginning to slip, which for him was a disaster. My father was an unmeasured genius, and his memory was important to him. He never lost his sense of humor. He, he told me one time near the end, he says, you know, there's a genuine benefit to this memory loss thing. I only have to rent one movie for the rest of my life. Said, Don, there's only two things you need to live a good life: honor and wisdom. You need enough honor to keep every promise you ever make, no matter what the personal consequences, and enough wisdom not to make too many promises like that. So, he and my mother celebrated their 66th wedding anniversary on a Saturday. Yeah, that's kind of what we thought. He went into a coma on Tuesday and left us on Thursday. That's functional. My little brother is a professor of music at the University of Colorado. He just came back from Russia and the Scandinavian countries, where they take him to teach each year, with a doctorate from the University of, I think it was Helsinki. I don't know. He's just got so many awards, I don't know. He was writing music with Stan Kenton when he was 19. Booker for the Army Band when he was 21. For fun, he just does a symphony once a year for the old Denver Symphony. Foremost synthesizer musician in the country, I think. One of the finest improvisational jazz musicians in the world. We grew up in the same house. He lived in the next room over, right down the hall. Yeah. We even petted the same dog. When I was 19, I was in my first federal penitentiary in Tokyo, Japan. And the contrast never did escape me. I didn't understand things. My favorite word in the Alcoholics Anonymous book is baffled. That was a lifestyle for me. I didn't understand what was going on because I looked like these people. If you've met one of us, you know you've met one of us. We kind of look the same. I was at my mother's 91st birthday, and here's all these little kids running around that look like me, and I didn't do it, I promise you. But we all look kind of the same, and I looked like them. But I can remember laying in bed, 13 years old, crying, wondering when my people were going to get back from Mars and pick me up, because it was clear to me I'd been left on the wrong planet somehow. Yeah, they're not coming, honey. I've waited a long time, and they're just not coming. One of the fun things about standing up here and getting to talk is you get to watch the heads out there going, and you know you're in the right place. My best friend when I was around 5 and 6 years old was a kid who had the same birthday as mine. That was our common tie. We were good buddies. We didn't play around his house much, but we were good buddies. And on my 6th birthday, I hadn't seen him, so I went to his house to see what was shaking. And a lady opened the door, and there's a party going on inside. And I heard the lady tell somebody inside, it's that strange little Pritz boy, Donnie. Because I was. And I still am. The only people I really understand are children. I've met 2 adults. I don't want anything they have. God, they were serious. Couldn't take a joke, right? The feeling of being disenfranchised, the feeling of being set apart and different, has only one honest human response: outrage. I think our spirits know from the time we get here that as good as you are and as bad as I am, I'm as good as you are, as bad as I am. I have as much reason to be here as you do. And my spirit rebels, and I get outraged, and outrage is not allowed. so that gets dampered. And then you start running with adolescent boys. I'm still convinced that we need a big 100,000-acre cage, and when they're 14, put them in it. And those that survive, let them out at 19. Okay. That ain't going to happen either. But so I was getting confused because my hormones started working. And I started learning about girls from boys. And I learned about women from men who don't know anything about women. And so I was confused. And there's only one honest response to being confused: anger and fear. And I'm a fairly good athlete. I also am a musician, not like my brother was. I play trumpet, trombone, harmonicas. Right now I'm playing the lap dulcimer because I like it and Tom Ivester doesn't. Told me if I ever played that thing in his presence, he'd break it over my head. So I took it to North Carolina with me. Anyway, I was first chair trumpet in the school band for a while, and then some kid came along and played better than I did, and I lost the spot. He had this ridiculous idea that you should practice 2 and 3 hours a day. And I have a natural talent. A half hour a week's plenty. So I quit playing trumpet. And that was kind of my emotional response to things. If it doesn't just happen just right, quit. I brought all this to my first drink. I was a mess when I got here. I wasn't front hall or back hall in high school. I hang out with 6 other guys who were also disenfranchised. God, I remember those terrible nights. We were doing what we were told to do. We were running up and down East Colfax in Larry Gurman's old Ford looking for girls. And I remember the terrible night we found some. It was awful. We didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do. It was a disaster. Then one night some of the older guys talked about getting drunk and having fun. So we got a guy from Lowry Air Force Base to buy us a bottle of bonded bourbon. We had the illusion that bonded bourbon was better somehow. All it is some insurance company says, Seagram's really did make this, and if you can prove different, we'll give you money for it. We'll put it in a warehouse. It's just whiskey. But it was bonded bourbon. And we took it out east of Denver to get drunk and have fun. I'm not stupid. I'm willing to have fun. You can show me how. And what happened to me that night is described in the book Alcoholics by Carl Jung as a spiritual awakening. He says, in essence, ideas and conceptions that used to rule the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side. An entirely new set of motives and emotions begins to dominate them. That's what happened to me with a couple of drinks of bonded bourbon. I can tell you all kinds of things that occurred, taller, cuter, broader. The thing I remember is that suddenly I had some plans. Up until that point, I had become a reactor in life, not a responder. It's so confusing in here. I need time to figure out what in the hell's going on. And so I began to build scripts because my behavior would cause people to say things like, why did you do that? And you started out telling them the truth. I don't know. And, that's not a good answer. You must know. You did it. Got another one. Was that last week, was it? So I began to read people. Got very good at it. I could tell by the tone of your voice and the way your body moved and your eyes and just which of these little answers you wanted, so you just go away and leave me alone while I figure out what the hell's going on here. And I got very good at it. Sometimes the timing was bad, but this night I changed. I was transformed. Alcohol did not just make me feel better. It transformed me. I suddenly had some plans. 15, 16-year-old kid, I've got plans, and they were good plans. As I reviewed my life quickly, and you do that with a couple drinks, right? There was a kid in my high school class that hadn't been treating me very well, and the plan was as soon as we were through, I was going to meet him back at Bill Bonsib's drive-in, and in front of the whole class, whip him. And I could have done it and not even breathed hard. I'd gone from being a coward to Zorro. Now, I thought I was a coward because I didn't like pain. That's how I think. You don't like pain, you're a coward. I've discovered since I got sane that pain is a very good thing to avoid as much as possible. Okay, there's an adequate supply on this planet. You don't have to go make up any. Okay, it comes along with your morning coffee some days. And there was a little girl in my class that hadn't been talking to me at all. And as soon as I was through whipping the bully, she and I were going to have a visit in front of everybody. And I could have done that too. What I didn't know until you found me and explained alcoholism to me is that I have a body that has a peculiar response to alcohol. My emotional nature is automatically, if one works, take 10. My physical response is, we need more of this. I didn't know that. I lost control of my drinking the first night we drank. By the time we got back to the drive-in, instead of what I had in mind, what they got to see was my partners carrying me by the elbows while I puked in the driveway. And that's my drinking. In one way or another, that's my drinking. And I've had a lot of adventures and drama. I sometimes hate to even mention them because people sometimes when they're new think that drama defines alcoholism. No, it doesn't. I know people who wreck cars when they're drunk and they're not alcoholic. I know people who wreck cars sober. I know people who lose their families and go through all the drama we say. We do it in style and with a regularity that drives regular people crazy. You helped me with a couple things that baffle me. I really, Angel, I love you, kid. I told Angel I had a special message for her, and I'd tell her several times. That's one. She's a good one. Mean as a snake. Watch her. Yeah, I got distracted. Look at that. Might as well go home. When I think about the difference between the non-alcoholic and the alcoholic, my sponsors told me I needed to bring my own memories to the book. I'm a big book person, but only in terms that this is what they're describing do I have a memory that fits that. Yeah, I do. When I go through the symptoms of alcoholism and look at my mother and I see a contrast. My mother loves peppermint schnapps. I mean, I like Altoids. But can you imagine drinking that stuff? It doesn't have any burn to it. It doesn't have any to it till later when you throw it back up. But my mother loves it. Every now and then, it comes on her that it's time to have some. And I watch her. I'm with her. Her little old eyes are dancing, and she gets that thing down from the shelf, and she got this tall, skinny glass. It wouldn't hold enough to help anybody, but it's there. It's elegant because my mother's elegant. And she puts it up and pours it in there, and her little old eyes are just, oh, she's ready. She goes, that is the most disgusting sound. For using alcohol. Good God. She'd do a couple like that. And then I've heard her actually say in public, That's enough. I'm beginning to feel it. Good God. There's a sound that goes along with my drinking, too. And that's the sound of relief from unbearable psychic pain. We all drink for the effect produced by alcohol. And what it did for me at the beginning and did at the end and did for moments during each day was relieve me from unbearable psychic pain. The sense of being separated from you, from God, from the planet. The sense that I'm alone out here. With alcohol, I'm not. On my own, I am. And it's just, there's no way to overcome that. You could not tell me that you loved me and make me even care. I didn't believe you. I don't know what you're talking about. 100 of you today, I have to watch it, can tell me I'm wonderful. But if Bob doesn't say it just right, that can screw up my whole day. My thinking is out of proportion. My emotions go out of proportion. I think it's funny. I don't get angry. I go from calm to killer rage just like that over really important stuff. Yeah. Oh. He cut me off. Where's my gun? Dinner isn't hot. They don't love me anymore. This marriage is over. Hey, bitch, get my suitcase ready. I mean, we're stupid. Let me tell you something I learned here. The most sane thought that I've ever had was the day I realized that there are people who love me no matter what I do. And there are people that don't like me at all no matter what I do. And there's billions of people that don't care if I ever show up, period. They don't even know I'm here. And if they did, they wouldn't care. That is complete sanity. For me to spend any time at all trying to please any one of those three groups is a waste of time. Okay? It just is a waste of time. So, I don't know why that came out now, but it did. Christmas week of 1967, I finally hit absolute rock bottom. I hit bottom first when I was 19, and then again at about 20, and, you know, numerous. Bottom's a simple thing. Bottom is when I wake up some morning and realize that whatever I had in mind for my life isn't going to happen. So I pick up new dreams and a new town and a new job and a new girlfriend and a new car, and we start over because I'm a quick starter. 1967, I had run completely out of bounds. In 1966, I was in my second federal penitentiary. I disliked the first one so much that I made real sure I didn't go again. They're just not nice. You can learn every life lesson you need to learn in less than 3 days. And from then on, it's just doing time. And the more time you do, the worse it gets because all you're doing is doing time. Please, God, don't do time in Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. There's too much fun to be had here. And I ended up on, yeah, I'll tell you about it. The mother of my two boys left when Terry was 2.5 and Sean was 1. She was also alcoholic. She just disappeared into the sunset. So I ended up with custody of them just as I was hitting another bottom. And so for the last 4.5 years of my drinking, my children and I were on the road because I was truly restless, irritable, and discontent, disenfranchised, and pissed. I joined the subculture. It was easier. I had a hard time making it in the real world anymore, so we got into the secondary real world. So the kids and I were on the road for 4.5 years, which is a little hard on kids. They thought it was normal until somebody told my oldest boy about school. He was about 6, and I swear to you, all I ever wanted to do was be a good father. And I kept trying and just couldn't pull it off. But we stopped so he could go to school. And the drama caught up with me. I'll tell you one of the reasons that I needed something more than just another program. I never hurt my kids. I didn't beat on them. I didn't abuse them, other than we just kept moving all the time. Some of that was fun. We came out of a peyote meeting one time where I'd had a vision, a real one. I saw a great bird flying high with no head and understood clearly that's me in my life. And we went into the North Woods, and I stayed sober 4 months. So you knew people, if you're thinking about visions, they work. They're good for about 4 months of sobriety. But I can't take any more. We heard that Lightning Hopkins was playing a gig down in San Francisco and just had to go, so we took a haunch of deer that we had killed in a backpack and hitchhiked down to San Francisco and used the deer to get in to see Lightning. And if you're going to spend any time with Lightning and the boys, you're going to smoke a little grass and drink a little booze, and it was all over. But anyway, we all have an ace in the hole, and my ace in the hole was my dad. I could burn everybody else and still come back, and Dad would take one more chance with us. So the kids and I were, Sean was 4 and Terry was close to 6. And we were hiding out at Dad's, resting up, getting ready for the next time. Not really planning the next one, but we were getting ready for the next time. And Albert called me from Albuquerque. Albert was one of the snakes I ran with. God bless him. Said, we got a problem. We got 30 kilos of good marijuana as far as Juarez, and our driver got arrested on a traffic charge, and it's laying in a hotel, and we need somebody to get it across the border. Do you want the job? Now, I'm trying to put my life back together, and I've got these 2 little boys, and my response was, sure, Albert, of course. And I didn't do it for money. I did it for prestige. I was the only person in the United States that they could think of to call that had what it took to go into old Mexico and rescue the goods. I don't have an ego problem. I just have an ego. And I knew how to do it, because I'm not stupid. And I wondered why people thought I was a sociopath. Well, when you're looking in from the outside, that's what you see. I straightened up. No drinking, no drugs, no nothing. And I mention drugs simply because I've used them. I'm not a drug addict, and we don't even need to go there. But if you're my age, this is where we started using some of them. Got clean, got the sport coat, Mr. Clean. Had them rent a VW bus in somebody else's name, of course. I wanted nothing that would tie me to anything. Had them get us a place to stay in Juarez. We're in Mr. Clean and his 2 little kids as tourists. They put us up in a motel that was actually a whorehouse, and I let them do that. And then as soon as everybody's out of sight, we moved uptown to the Holiday Inn type thing, where we belonged. I didn't make the transfer. They made the transfer. If anybody's watching, they're watching the hotel. Then they gave it to me, and I did the math on the thing, because I'm not stupid. 30 kilos of Mexican marijuana wrapped the way they did it in those days fit perfectly into a single air mattress. So I just opened up the corner and stuffed it and then resealed it. It keeps the smell down. Then as we came to the border, I put dirty diapers on top of that, and then I put my little boys on top of that. And just before we hit the border crossing, I turned around and yelled at them right out of nowhere for no reason whatsoever, so they'd be crying. and forevermore. Broke the trust my kids had in me forever. It's not repaired yet. I can tell. It's gone. So Christmas week, when I'm looking at my life, and I did a full inventory, then I looked at my life. That's one of the memories that got me to understand something. I had become completely useless, first of all. I'm on federal parole raising these kids. We didn't have a Christmas tree till somebody gave us one for $1. We didn't have any presents. On Christmas Day, my mom told my dad when we went to see them, you and your kids can't come here anymore. They can't stand watching you die. And that's what I'd been reduced to. And those other memories, like the one I just told you, I could not think of any way to get out of that. I need something that will change me into the kind of person who's incapable of committing that act. And to the best of my knowledge, there wasn't anything. I've tried everything. I came out of the federal penitentiary, 19 years old, with a bad conduct discharge, and went immediately into Dianetics. If I wonder about my choices, I turn my own life over to the care of a good science fiction writer. That's how good I can pick what's good for me, and he's good. I've been through psychiatry, and I've been through church, and I've been through all kinds of things trying to change, and nothing ever worked. And I couldn't think of anything that would work, so I just took a 2-month supply of the garbage that I was using at the time and shot it up my arm and drank everything in the house and lay down and died. And I truly believe I died. I've got to tell you, I honestly have never had a thought of a drink from that day to this. It's over for me, which means I am more vulnerable than you can imagine because I don't see alcohol. If I don't have something else watching out for me, I'll stumble over it because I won't see it. I woke up the next morning and I didn't feel good. Well, this old body said, I'm tired of you. I'm living in a body that won't die, and it's got with it a mind that won't work. So I came to a marvelous state of being. I became willing to go anywhere anyone said and do anything anyone said if it meant I didn't have to be that person ever again. I would rather die. So my experience with Alcoholics Anonymous is when new people come to me, I don't tell them if you drink, you're going to die. I tell them the truth. If you continue to drink, you will probably live the way you're living now for quite some time. That's a hell of a lot stronger threat than you're going to die, because I know there's people like me that will say, oh, when? Dear God, when? Help me here. So I do tell them they don't have to drink. I believe the power of God entered into my life at that point, because that same morning the federal people, I'm on federal parole, and the state came and picked me up. They had 9 charges. The first one called for 3 years to life in the penitentiary. The DA promised me he'd bring the others one at a time if I beat that, and I still owed the feds 5 years. And I really don't care. I'm done. Laid in the county jail in Denver for 5.5 months and detoxed. Went to trial, and they gave me a plea bargain. They said, we don't want to have this messy trial. If you'll help us, the feds have agreed to take you to Fort Worth, Texas. We'll give you 1.5 to 3 if you plead guilty to another charge. We'll turn you to the feds, and they'll take you to Texas to the hospital and fix you. And I'm not stupid. I signed the papers right there. Federal hospital beats the hell out of penitentiary. I'll be out of there in 6 months. They'll tell me what's wrong with me. They'll tell me how long it's going to take to fix that. They'll supply me with all the symptoms I need to show them to prove I'm getting better. That's my best game. I've been playing it since I was little. But what I want to talk to you about is power. If you know anything about power, you know that when the state of Colorado and the federal government says Don goes from Denver to Fort Worth, Texas, within 5 days, Don's in Fort Worth, Texas. Instead, at the very last minute, the federal man had checked with the hospital, and their determination was, we can't help this one. And he changed his mind and went to the judge and said, let's just lock him up so he didn't hurt anybody. We can't do anything for him. And I believe that that was God's first direct intervention into my life, and it was based on only one thing. I had totally, completely, without reservation, surrendered. Didn't surrender to anything. Very careful with people when I'm working with them. I don't want you to think you have to surrender to anything. Just surrender. You know what surrender sounds like? I can't do this anymore. If I hear you say that, I got you. Now we can go to work. If you can't say that, come to my house for a while and I'll get you there. I really do like to help people die. I really do. Because once that happens, then they can live. This book talks about being reborn. You gotta die first. Die to the old way. I can't do this anymore. Anyway, that's where you found me. You came over to the fish tank in the Colorado State Penitentiary in the form of 3 inmates, numbers on their chests, ugly. Except for Bruce. Bruce was really kind of cute. But the other 2 look like you. Isn't he cute? Angel, I love you. That's twice. They called us down that day. They said, you people will come down, you will listen. And I didn't have anything better to do, so I went down. And for the first time in my life, I did the right thing. I listened. This ugly little guy got up and he said, my name's Doc and I'm an alcoholic. And that means that I'm powerless over alcohol and guards and drugs and all of the other circumstances in my life. And my life has become unmanageable. And if any of you smart bastards think you can still manage your lives, look at the reward the state just gave you for the nifty job you've been doing. He said, your very best thinking got you to the penitentiary. You're not doing too good, are you? Got me. But then he said something that I've only heard here. We can show you a new way of thinking. We can show you how to learn to live a way of life that will make sense to you. And there was a new idea. I'd been trying to live my life so it made sense to you. Well, I got to tell you, my life makes sense to me today. It's made sense for 35 years. But it really makes sense to me today. I'm going to piss some people off. I've been married to the same woman, living in the same house for 26 years now, and we haven't had a fight yet. It's absolutely unnecessary. She's right all the time anyway. So. No, what we do in my house is communicate. It doesn't mean we don't have disagreements, but I don't want to fight anymore, particularly not the people I love the most. Okay? My children are not afraid of me. I sometimes wish they were. They'd be a little easier to deal with. My grandchildren think I'm the slickest thing since buttered bread. My granddaughter actually came to me the other day. You want to know what AA is about? My granddaughter came to me the other day and says, Grandpa, you're just the best grandpa in the world. And I'm always curious. I said, well, why do you think that, Gigi? She says, oh, because you love us so much. See, you taught me about that. Without reservation. She says, Grandpa, how is it that you know everything? I'm not going to disillusion her yet. And you better have an answer, and I have one. I said, honey, it's because I've lived a long time, and I pay attention. Oh, okay. She trips off. I learned something about children from here. Raising children the way most of us do it is a criminal activity. It's true. I will try to impose my values and my ideas of who you are on you, and you better behave. That's criminal. Okay. More better, we have learned how to encourage the children to be who they are. There are very strong disciplines in my life. My 2 young grandsons were raising hell one day, and I just said, boys, we don't do that in this house. And they quit. I wish I'd have known how to do that when I was raising mine. My little one, My little Christopher, God bless him, he'd run around. He was a maniac. And then he'd leap up on the couch and stick his thumb in his mouth and rub his ear for about 2 minutes. He was meditating in whatever way he did. He was pausing. And then he'd get up and run. And then one day I was sitting there and he jumped up on the couch, stuck his thumb in his mouth, and rubbed my ear. I was never to see my children again. That's what they told me. When I came out of the penitentiary, the man said, "Don't ever try to impress me and get your kids back, because I don't impress, and I don't think you're a good father. You're a bum. I'll watch you, and if I ever think you're going to amount to anything, I'll contact you." And 2.5 years later, they gave my children back to me. At a time when I was the house father of a little place called the Hand of Hope. We didn't have any place to put drunks, and some of them need a little time and space. So Cricket had a house, and I had a job driving a truck. And we had an empty basement that would hold 17 mattresses. And we had this message just flying out of us. We couldn't hold it back. And we just started taking them in. And they thought that was a suitable environment to give my children back to me. That was a funny thing, too. We were carried through the step process in 5 weeks. In order to go to the main meeting in the group I came into, it happened on Friday night, and they let real people in from the outside. We had a 2-hour, actually about 2.5-hour meeting, an hour where the inmates did a meeting, a little coffee break, and then an hour when the outsiders shared a little speaker meeting. We weren't allowed to go to that until we completed the 12-step study school, and that was simply, we went on Saturday and Sunday afternoon for about 4 hours, gave up all of our privileges, and went up there, and these same idiots sat us down, and they read the book Alcoholics Anonymous to us out loud like we couldn't read. And then they would share their experience with it and of it, and they would give us exercises to do. My sponsors were real sponsors. They made sure I understood I can't have their experience. I'm going to have my own. Here's what we did. They captured me because Bruce was doing a natural life sentence for a double murder he'd committed one morning when he was 17 years old in a drunken rage. In a shootout with the police, he killed some people on the street. Now, I'd never done anything like that. If I'd had to identify with that, I couldn't be here. But he talked about that morning. He said, I woke up feeling that nobody cared whether I lived or died. And the pain of that was so much I started drinking to kill the pain, only this day it didn't kill it, it just intensified it. And he went, I've done that. But the man telling me the story was incapable of committing that act, and I could see that. And I asked him about it. He said, that's right, I have been changed, and God changed me. I didn't care who changed him. He'd been changed. Roy Nichols was a stick-up man. Not a good one, obviously. But, okay. He liked to go to supermarkets and go down the line, and he wasn't doing it for the money either. He just liked the look on your face when he put a gun to your head. Give him that sense of power. The man telling me that story was not capable of doing that kind of thing. Phil Gutierrez was one of my favorite people of all time. Phil came from Guam when he was 17 because he was too violent for them to stand him anymore. And he had family in Denver, so they sent him to Denver. A few years later, on a drunk, he threw some people out of a 3-story window. And Guam didn't want him back, so they just locked him up. I lived on sill B49 right. That's the B tier, 4th tier up. 9th one down on the B side, 4 stories up. And Phil came to me one day, here's this oriental face with a smile on it, scarier than hell. He said, I just realized I've been here 7 years and you're the first person I've ever sponsored. You will stay sober. Oh, yeah. Phil Gutierrez taught me how to touch physically in a penitentiary environment where that can be risky. But Phil knew that the human touch is an absolute requirement to good health. Babies grow healthy just because you hold them and pat them and pet them. I watched my wife do that for years. Babies who don't get that don't grow healthy. The great master knew that. He'd walk along the road and he'd see some guy standing there, blind and covered with sores and crippled and moaning. And the guy thought he was alone because he was blind and crippled and had sores. The master knew something. He was blind and crippled and had these sores because he thought he was alone. So he'd reach out and he'd touch him. And the instant you touch someone, you make a lie out of "I'm alone." They don't even have to like it, but it's a lie now. And then he would say something like, "Anybody home?" He would say something to them while he's touching them. And then he would give them this message: "You don't have to do this anymore, you know." Oh, I didn't know that. No, you don't have to do that. "Would you like to get up?" And if they said yes, he said, "Okay, I'm going to give you a secret. You ready? Get up." And he would say it with such total conviction that they would get up. And I liken that to what we do here. New folks walk in and we shake their hand or pat them on the shoulder and ask them, "Is there anybody there?" In all the different ways we say "I love you," that's one of the best. "Well, dummy." "Love you, Angel." That's 3. That's all you get tonight. Now I'll give you one more. "I love you, Angel." That's 4. I'm going to give you some work to do, Cedar. And if we do this thing right, we tell them, "You don't have to do this anymore. You don't ever have to drink again, ever." Would you like that? Do you want to stop drinking? It's cruel to make somebody do something. If they want to stop, we ask them, "Do you think you can do it alone?" Because you're not alone here. And if they say, "Yeah, I want to stop," well, we're going to give you a secret. Are you ready? Don't drink. And we hold whole conventions of people whose main message is, "Don't do that." I get spiritual messages from everywhere. My favorite came off a hee-haw one day. Well, when you're looking for it, that's where you're going to get it. They ushered that guy into that crazy doctor's office. And Doc says, "What's the matter?" And the guy said, "Oh, God, Doc, every time I do this, it hurts." And so the doctor hit him in the head with a rubber chicken and said, "Don't do that, dummy." We ask people, "Do you want what we have?" Well, just what do we have that anybody would want? That was an important question for me because I'm in business from the very beginning. I would rather die than live the way I was anymore. And I was faced with a bit of a dilemma. I'm not afraid of the penitentiary and wasn't then either. Those of us who have been there that know that it's just another community and you learn how to live there and you stay alive. You know, find out who the players are, don't play, and you'll make it through. What I had me afraid is that I knew sometime in the next 1.5 to 7 years they're going to put me back on the street, and I didn't know how to live out there. Didn't have a clue. Terrified of that. But they kept saying, "We can show you a new way to live." So, and the way I apply that in my life is very simple. I have a pretty good life. That doesn't mean that you want my kind of vehicle or that you want to live in my neighborhood. But most of the alcoholics I know do want a family. I deal with a lot of inmates. And at the top of the list when we're looking at what makes sense to you, family's right at the top of the list, always. One of the reasons Alcoholics Anonymous became a worldwide phenomenon was that the world saw the restoration of family. I've watched it here this weekend. This is a family deal. And I want to be a member of a family, so I learned first how to do that by being among you. I picked my first street sponsor because he had a family. That's really why I picked him. He at least had one. They weren't doing too good, but he had one. Dan Burns, one of my heroes. I mean, he has taken family to an obsessive place. You're one of my heroes, too. You put up with that for years. If I'm going to sponsor you, the only way I can do it is to be the way I was sponsored. I will ask you, if you really want me to do that, what we're going to do is go through the big book. We'll do a lot of other things, but one thing we will do is go through the big book. That's what I think sponsorship is in my world. That means you will come to my house at 6 o'clock in the morning on a regular basis. We can do it once a week. We can do it 5 days a week. I don't care. But it has to be regular. If you're going to be a member of any family or any community, there has to be a certain amount of regular in your life. People have got to be able to count on me. And one of the ways I learned that is to look at what made people mad. Irregularity. Did I receive? Well, all right. I love what your minds do with just simple truth. What I want to have happen, really, is I want you to see how a recovered alcoholic and his family prepare for the day. The hardest time in our lives is in the morning. We think it's in the evening. It's not. It's in the morning. How do I get out of this house and go to work? I want to, but I got the terrors on me. I want you to see how we prepare, how my wife prepares the day, how these two little daughters of mine prepare for the day, how I prepare for the day to get things going. We will commence spiritual exercises first. That's what we're doing. It also, I got a great lesson from my young daughter, Kelly. God sends me psychopaths a lot because I know who they are. They're just frightened little boys. And they don't scare me. What are they going to do, kill me? All right, that's already been done. I don't worry about them. And the kids don't worry about them because I told them who they're getting. And that they're perfectly safe because I'm between them and danger. And they can run faster than the guy can step over me. I give them a bunch of crap just to make them feel safe. They don't know who's who. I'm sitting there with a real lunatic. This is the one that threatened to kill me one day while I was standing in my driveway. He didn't, but he threatened to. He had an energy. But anyway, my young daughter, she was about 13, came down the stairs, and she's my activist daughter, and we've encouraged that. She says, and I can hear attitude. And I'm working. We've got life and death going on here. Excuse me, she says. And I stopped for a minute. I said, what do you want, Kelly? She says, I live here too, you know, and you haven't introduced me to this person. And we both got a lesson in manners. The spiritual life is mainly one of good manners, that's all. And I learned it from the children. My wife loves you guys. She thinks you're the most entertaining people she's ever met. We have a traditions and concepts study in my home every week, Wednesday night. Dave got to come. It's just a potluck, and it's a good excuse to get together. And my wife was the administrative head nurse of the CRC unit at University Hospital and Children's Hospitals for 30 years, and all she's ever wanted to be was a cook and a baker. So she just loves baking for this potluck. She's trying out all of her new recipes on you guys. So far, nobody's died. The meeting is growing. The word's going around. They're not learning much about traditions, but boy, that cheesecake was good. Okay. I get frustrated here. I've been living with the certain and sure knowledge that where I am, God is for 35 years. And that means that every day of my life there's been some truly unique and unusual experience occur, and I just wish I could tell you about all of them. The making of amends was the most important thing I've ever done and still do. It means to change, not to say I'm sorry. My sponsor says you don't ever get to say you're sorry. You've been sorry your whole life. You get to say I was wrong and I've harmed you. I got free at the 8th step, getting willing to make amends to anyone on the planet. See, I want to be square. My understanding of the spiritual life is that I am you and you are me. And until we're square, I can't be okay either. So I work very hard to make sure you don't have to like me, but please understand, we're square. Sponsorship is an activity carried on between peers. I've walked the road maybe a little more often than you do, and I know where some of the snakes are, and I'll come back and walk with you, but we're walking together. And most of the places where I found out there aren't any snakes, they're just sticks. The snakes are on my head. Anyway, it took 22 years to make amends to my brother. To the best of my knowledge, the amends that I need to make are all made. I'm fully aware that there's some I may not remember, but I stand before you clean tonight, to the best of my knowledge. If I don't make it home, don't worry about it. I won't come back and haunt you. Well, maybe you. Yeah. At his request. My brother's a straight arrow, and I betrayed him. I was his hero, and I betrayed our dreams. He watched me destroy the family's dreams. He just had a hard time with me. Remember, he's playing with Stan Kenton at 19, and I'm in the penitentiary at 19. And I just destroyed everything. He couldn't trust me for years. He's a very kind man, so he's never unkind to me, but I could feel it. Just, that's as close as we're going to get. 22 years sober, he invited my wife and I over for dinner one night. And when it was over, he was very honest with me. He said, you know, Don, I'm not sure you and I can ever be friends, but this was pleasant. We could do this again, which started something. Now, I believe in being regular. I made amends to my mother in finding out all she ever wanted, she said, for me was that I'd be happy. So I go by her house regularly happy. That's all it took. I drag my happiness with me. Wives, children, grandchildren, stories about you, $2 bills, all kinds of stuff. I'll tell you what you've done for my mother. When her mother died several years ago, I was on your general service board, and I had a very important place that I was supposed to be. And Grandma died, I think it was on a Wednesday or Thursday, and I went to Mom, and I said, I can cancel this weekend. She said, don't do that. And I said, no, I can cancel it. She said, I'm fine. Don't do that. Can you be back for the funeral on Monday? And I said, sure. She said, well, then you go because you have an obligation to the living. You gave her that. I ended up working for the Department of Corrections in North Carolina. When God wants you somewhere, the walls just fall down. You know, I'm highly qualified. See, my message is, I know you want to get out. More better, why don't I show you how to stay out? All you got to do to get out is lay here long enough, and they'll throw you out. Anyway, I'd go home on a regular basis. On one of those trips, I was visiting with Mom, and my little brother came in, and I had my leg crossed, and we were visiting, and he just sat down. And all of a sudden, he reached out and kicked me on the bottom of the shoe. And he said, you know, Don, I'm really glad to see you. And he was shocked because he really was, and he hadn't felt that for years. He said, look, next time you're in town, let you and I go up to the cabin and do a little fishing. Well, God's made me a listener. What he really said is, as soon as possible, come back here, and you and I will go up where there's no phones and no interruptions, because we need a whole day to sort this out. And we did. I made a trip back, and we went up. And my brother gave me one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given. At the end of our discussion, one of the things he told me is that he and I are doing the same thing. He's a musician, and he says, I'm trying to reach people at depths. So a little change takes place in them, and they feel better than when they met me. He said, you do the same thing. I've watched you. My instrument is this one, yours is this one. See, I'm a firm believer that our job here is to pierce each other every time we meet with a sword of truth. My job is to keep that sword so sharp that it goes in and comes out without leaving a wound. But it still has to be the truth. Anyway, when we finished all that up, he said, there's one last thing I need you to know, Don. He said, I'm 58 years old now, and I believe I've made a decent contribution to life. And it thrilled me because you don't just say that to anybody. That's his essence he's giving me. He trusts me again. We are peers again. But the greatness of the gift is that I've been trying to tell you how I feel about you for years. I've told the story of the anvil in the lake and the Michelangelo and all that in some effort to find the right words to tell you how much I care about you and how I see you. Well, he gave it to me. See, I'm 69 now, and because of you, I believe I've been able to make a decent contribution to life. Thank you.